Ambassador Vel stood in the council chamber and watched his world burn. Through the massive windows, he could see the orange glow on the horizon. The fires were spreading. They had been spreading for 3 days now. "Another colony just went silent," someone said behind him. Vel did not turn around. He knew the voice belonged to council member Wrath. Everyone in the chamber sounded the same now. Tired, scared, defeated. "How many does that make?" Vel asked. 12, Wrath answered. 12 colonies gone in 6 weeks. Vel closed his 4 eyes and tried to remember what peace felt like. The Calrix Coalition had enjoyed peace for 3,000 years. 47 different species living together, trading, sharing knowledge, exploring the stars. They had no armies, they had no weapons, they never needed them, until the Vryn came. The first colony died so quickly that no one knew what happened. One day, there were 2 billion Calrix living on Melter 5. The next day, silence. When the Coalition sent ships to investigate, they found nothing but empty buildings and strange organic residue covering everything. The second colony sent a distress call before it fell. The message was simple and terrifying. "They're eating everything. They're eating us." By the third colony, they knew what the Vryn were. A swarm species, a hive mind that consumed all biological matter in its path. They moved from world to world like locusts, stripping planets clean before moving on. The Coalition tried to fight back. They sent their security forces, ships designed for crowd control and asteroid mining. The Vryn destroyed them in minutes. Coalition ships had mining lasers. Vryn ships had weapons built for war. "The Council wants to surrender," Wrath said quietly. Vel turned to face him. Wrath was an elderly Calrix. His shell faded with age. He had served on the Council for 60 years. Vel had never seen him look so old. "Surrender?" Vel repeated. "We tried that. We sent them messages. We offered them anything they wanted. They didn't even respond." "Then what do we do?" Wrath asked. "We have no weapons, no soldiers, no defenses. We are scholars and artists and farmers. We are not fighters." Vel looked back at the burning horizon. Somewhere out there, the Vryn were getting closer. They would reach the capital in days, maybe hours. And when they did, the Calrix Coalition would end. 3,000 years of peace would become nothing but a memory. "There must be someone who can help us," Vel said. "We sent distress calls to every species in the known galaxy," Wrath replied. "No one answered. Everyone is either too far away or too afraid." Vel walked to his workstation and pulled up the old files. He searched through decades of diplomatic records, looking for anything, any option they had missed. His claws moved across the controls, faster and faster, until he found something that made him stop. "What is this?" he asked. The file was 50 years old. It was an application to join the Coalition. The species called themselves humans, from a planet called Earth. "Oh, that," Wrath said, moving closer to look at the screen. "We rejected them. They were unsuitable." "Why?" Vel asked, reading through the file. "Their planet was classified as a Class 12 death world," Wrath explained. "Do you know what that means? Everything on their planet tries to kill them. The weather, the animals, the plants, even tiny organisms in the water. And somehow, they not only survived, but became the dominant species." Vel kept reading. The file contained reports from the survey team that visited Earth. The reports described a species that was aggressive, territorial, and violent. Humans had wars. They had weapons. They had killed each other by the millions throughout their history. "They sound dangerous," Vel said. "Exactly," Wrath agreed. "Too dangerous. The Council decided we did not want such a violent species in our coalition. We told them to reapply in a few hundred years after they had become more peaceful." Vel looked at the coordinates for Earth. It was not close, but it was not impossible to reach. "Did the humans ever reapply?" Vel asked. No, Wrath said. I think they were insulted by our rejection. They have kept to themselves ever since. Vel made a decision. It was probably a stupid decision. It might even be a dangerous decision. But it was the only decision he could think of. I'm sending them a message, Vel said. What? Wrath moved closer. Vel, no. The Council did not authorize this. The Council is preparing to die, Vel said. His claws moved across the controls, setting up a transmission to Earth. We rejected the humans because they were too violent, too dangerous, too good at war, but maybe that's exactly what we need right now. And if they come here? Wrath asked. If they are as violent as the reports say? Then we face one danger instead of another, Vel said, but at least we face it trying to survive. He activated the transmission. The message was simple because Vel did not have time for complicated words. He recorded himself speaking, his voice shaking slightly. This is Ambassador Vel of the Calrix Coalition. We are under attack. 12 of our colonies are gone. Billions are dead. We tried to surrender, but our enemy does not accept surrender. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons, no armies, no hope. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We are dying. He added the coordinates and all the information about the Vryn that they had gathered. Then he sent the message toward Earth at maximum speed. How long until they receive it? Wrath asked. 3 days, Vel answered. If they respond immediately and come at their fastest speed, maybe a week total. We don't have a week, Wrath said quietly. Vel looked out the window again. The fires were closer now. In the distance, he could see ships evacuating civilians. But there was nowhere safe to evacuate them to. The Vryn were everywhere. I know, Vel said, but it's all we have. That night, the Vryn reached the capital city. Their ships filled the sky like a dark cloud. The Coalition sent one final message to all frequencies, broadcasting to anyone who might hear. We surrender. We beg for mercy. Take what you want. Please stop killing us. The Vryn responded by beginning their assault. They did not want surrender. They wanted extinction. Vel stayed at his post in the council chamber, watching the city burn and waiting for a response from Earth that might never come. Every few minutes he checked his communications panel. Nothing, just static and screams. 3 days passed. The fires grew larger. The Vryn consumed more of the city. Half the council was dead. The rest were hiding in bunkers deep underground. Vel checked his panel again. Still nothing from Earth. He sat down and put his head in his hands. It was over. The Coalition had lasted 3,000 years, and now it would end because they had been too peaceful to defend themselves. Then his panel beeped. A new message. He jumped up and opened it with shaking claws. The message was short, just 5 words in the human language, which his translator converted instantly. Received your call. Coming now. Vel stared at the screen. They answered. The humans from the Death World had actually answered. He just hoped they would arrive in time. Captain Tay stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the Calrix system appear on his screens. 72 hours. That was how long it took for Earth's fastest ships to reach this place after receiving the distress call. Sensors are picking up debris fields, Lieutenant Hannah said from her station. She was young for a tactical officer, but she had sharp eyes and quick hands. Looks like recent battles. Very recent. Tay nodded. He had read the Calrix message 100 times during the journey. A peaceful species begging for help. An enemy that did not accept surrender. He had seen many things in his 20 years of service, but this felt different. How many ships did we bring? Asked Ambassador Vel through the communication channel. The Calrix had been sending constant messages since detecting the human fleet. 5, Tay answered simply. There was a long silence. Tay could almost hear the disappointment in that silence. 5 ships to save an entire civilization. How many soldiers? Vel asked, his voice quieter now. About 2,000, Tay said. We're the advanced scout group. The main fleet is coming, but they're 3 weeks behind us. Another silence. Tay understood. The Calrics probably thought they had made a mistake calling for help from Earth. What could 5 ships do? We're detecting the enemy, Hana said suddenly. Her fingers moved across her controls. Multiple contacts, very multiple. I count 317 vessels. Tay smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been in too many fights and knew what was coming next. Show me, he said. The main screen filled with images of the Vryn fleet. The ships were organic, grown rather than built. They looked like massive insects. All chitinous armor and sharp edges. They were moving toward what remained of the Calric's capital world. They've detected us, Hana reported. They're changing course, coming toward us. All ships, battle formation Delta, Tay ordered. He pressed the button to open a channel to all 5 human vessels. This is Captain Tay. We have 300 enemy contacts, and they think we're an easy target. Let's show them what happens when they think wrong. The 5 human ships moved into position. To the Calrics watching from their bunkers, the formation must have looked strange. Human ships were not elegant like Calric's vessels. They were blocky and covered in armor plating. They looked like they had been in many fights before, because they had. The Vryn fleet approached fast, 300 ships against 5. The Calrics probably expected to watch the humans die quickly. Instead, they watched something they had never seen before. They watched war. The moment the Vryn came into range, the human ships opened fire. But these were not mining lasers or crowd control tools. These were railguns, missile batteries, and energy weapons designed for one purpose: destroying enemy ships. The Indomitable shook as its main gun fired. The railgun projectile moved at a significant fraction of light speed. It hit a Vryn ship, and the ship simply exploded, torn apart by the kinetic impact. Target destroyed, Hana said calmly. Acquiring next target. All around them, the other human ships were doing the same. The Vryn tried to return fire, but human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their shields were designed to take hits. Enemy ship trying to ram us, Hana warned. Let it come, Tay said. At the last moment, the Indomitable rotated and fired its maneuvering thrusters. The Vryn ship missed by meters. As it passed, the Indomitable fired point defense weapons directly into its exposed underside. The Vryn ship broke apart. Tay watched his screens carefully. The Vryn were learning. They were adapting. They started to swarm, trying to overwhelm the human ships with numbers. Commander Ryu, your Marines ready? Tay asked. Always, came the gruff voice of Commander Ryu from the Marine Bay. Good. We're about to get visitors. Several Vryn ships latched onto the Indomitable's hull. They were trying to board, trying to get inside and kill the crew. It was a common tactic when your weapons could not penetrate the enemy's armor. Alarms blared as the Vryn cut through the outer hull. Tay could hear the sound of their claws on metal, scratching and tearing. Then he heard gunfire. Ryu and his Marines were waiting at every breach point. The Vryn expected to find scared prey. Instead, they found humans with rifles, grenades, and decades of experience fighting off hostile boarding parties. Boarders repelled on Deck 7, Ryu reported. Deck 9 is clear. Deck 12 is... Well, it's messy, but we're good. On the main screen, Tay watched as 2 human ships moved into close formation with a Vryn capital vessel. He knew what they were about to do. He had done it himself many times. They're going to ram it, Vel said through the communication channel. The Calrics had been watching the entire battle in stunned silence. No, Tay corrected. Watch. At the last moment, both human ships fired their main engines and spun away. But they had launched something. Boarding pods, dozens of them slamming into the Vryn ship's hull. Marines are inside the enemy flagship, Hana reported. What happened next took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of humans fighting through a ship full of Vryn soldiers. Then the Vryn flagship's weapons went silent. Its engines stopped. The entire ship went dark. "Enemy flagship captured," Hana said with satisfaction. The remaining Vryn ships seemed to realize something was wrong. They started to retreat. But human ships were faster. Tay's fleet pursued them, destroying ship after ship as they tried to run. 4 hours after the battle began, it was over. 300 Vryn ships had attacked. 273 were destroyed. 27 were captured. 0 escaped. 5 human ships. Not a single one seriously damaged. Tay opened a channel to the Calrix capital. "This is Captain Tay of the Indomitable. The immediate threat has been eliminated. We're sending medical teams and supplies down to the surface." "How?" Vel asked. His voice sounded strange. "How did you do that?" Tay looked at the debris field floating around his ship. "We've been fighting wars since before we discovered fire," he said quietly. 3 separate hostile species have tried to conquer Earth in the last 50 years. We learned how to fight, or we died. We chose to learn. "But your ships," Vel said, "they're so small compared to the Vryn fleet." Hana smiled at her station. She pressed a button and sent a file to the Calrix. "Those are tactical doctrines," she said. "Ramming, boarding, atmospheric combat drops, guerrilla warfare, combined arms, electronic warfare. We have 3,000 years of military history. The Vryn have only ever fought species that couldn't fight back." Tay stood up from his command chair. "We're going to help you rebuild, but first we need to talk about defense. The Vryn will come back. They always do." "How many soldiers did you say you have?" Vel asked again. "On these 5 ships? 2,000, Tay answered. He looked at his crew, Hana at tactical, Ryu preparing his Marines for surface deployment, engineers already working to repair minor damage. "We're just the scouts, the vanguard. The main fleet is coming." "How many ships in your main fleet?" Vel asked. Tay smiled. "Enough." Over the next few hours, human teams descended to the Calrix capital. They brought medical supplies, food, and equipment. Ryu's Marines set up defensive positions around the remaining civilian centers. Vel met Tai in person for the first time near a refugee shelter. The Calrix ambassador stared at the human captain. Tay was not particularly tall or intimidating. He looked tired. He had scars on his face and hands, but his eyes were alert, constantly scanning for threats. "You were rejected from our coalition," Vel said. "We called you too violent." "I know," Tay said. "I read the file during the trip here." "And you still came to help us?" Tay looked at the Calrix refugees being treated by human medics. He saw children being given food. He saw injured being carried to medical tents. "You called for help," Tay said simply. "We answered. That's what civilized people do." Vel felt something he had not felt in weeks. He felt hope. "The Vryn will send more ships," Vel said. "Yes," Tay agreed. "Probably much more. This was just a scouting force." "Can you stop them?" Tay looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the main human fleet was coming. Ships built in the orbital foundries above Earth. Crews trained in 100 different battles. An entire species that had learned to fight and survive on a world that tried to kill them every single day. "Yes," Tay said. "We can stop them." Commander Ryu stood on the boarding ramp of the transport ship and looked down at the planet below. The Calrix called it Melkon 7. It used to be a colony of 3 million people. Now it was a Vryn breeding ground. "How many hostiles?" he asked. Private Sora checked her scanner. She was the youngest in the unit, fresh from medical training, but she had good instincts. "Scanner shows approximately 50,000 Vryn soldiers on the surface, maybe more underground." "And we have?" Ryu asked, though he already knew the answer. 500 Marines, sir," replied Corporal Baum. She was grinning. Baum always grinned before a deployment. 50,000 against 500? Almost seems fair. Ryu allowed himself a small smile. His Marines were good. They had trained on Earth, where the gravity was higher and the air was thicker. They had trained in deserts where the heat could kill. They had trained in frozen wastelands where the cold could kill. A planet full of Vryn was just another Tuesday. "Remember the mission," Ryu said. "There are still Calric civilians down there, hiding, scared. We find them. We protect them. We get them out. Killing Vryn is secondary." "Sir, yes, sir," the Marines responded. The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere. Below them, Vryn ground weapons opened fire. The transport's shields absorbed most of it. The rest bounced off the armored hull. 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Ryu checked his rifle one more time. Standard Earth military weapon, fired solid projectiles at high velocity. Simple, reliable, deadly. The Calrics had energy weapons that were more elegant, but human soldiers preferred guns that worked even when covered in mud, blood, and alien guts. 10 seconds. The ramp opened. Wind and noise rushed in. Below them, Ryu could see the Vryn moving. They looked like giant insects, each one the size of a small car. They had thick armor and sharp claws. They moved in swarms, guided by their hive mind. "Go, go, go!" Ryu shouted. The Marines dropped. Some used jetpacks for controlled descent. Others used grav chutes. Private Jin, the unit sniper, used a stealth drop, falling silently with minimal equipment. Ryu's boots hit the ground hard. The planet's gravity was lower than Earth's, which made everything easier. He immediately moved to cover behind a ruined building. Around him, his Marines were doing the same, spreading out into tactical positions. The Vryn noticed them and attacked. A wave of soldiers rushed toward their position, claws extended, mandibles clicking. "Fire at will," Ryu ordered. The sound of gunfire filled the air. Human weapons were loud. Each shot cracked like thunder. The Vryn fell in waves, their armor cracking under the impact of high-velocity rounds. But there were so many of them. For every Vryn that fell, 2 more took its place. "Sora, get over here," Ryu called. The young medic ran to his position, keeping low. "Sir, you're a biologist. Tell me about these things. What are their weaknesses?" Sora pulled out her scanner and studied the Vryn bodies. "They communicate through pheromones, chemical signals. If we disrupt that, they lose coordination." "How do we disrupt it?" "Fire," Sora said simply. "Or certain chemicals. Actually, most of our smoke grenades should do it. The compounds are similar to what some Earth insects use. It will confuse them." Ryu smiled. "Bomb! Smoke grenades! All of them!" Bomb laughed and started throwing grenades. The other Marines did the same. Within seconds, the entire area was covered in thick smoke. But this smoke did more than hide the humans. It scrambled the Vryn communication. The Vryn stopped their organized attack. They milled around, confused, bumping into each other. Some attacked their own kind by mistake. "Now!" Ryu ordered. The Marines advanced through the smoke. They moved in pairs, covering each other. They had trained for this. They had trained for fighting in worse conditions than this. Private Jin was positioned on a building 2 kilometers away. Through her scope, she could see Vryn commanders. They were larger than the regular soldiers, with different markings. She took a breath and fired. 1 shot, 1 kill. She moved to the next target. Another shot, another kill. Without commanders, the Vryn soldiers became even more confused. The hive mind was smart, but individual Vryn were not. They needed guidance, direction. Jin was taking that away, 1 bullet at a time. "Found civilians!" one of the Marines called out. Rao ran to the location. There was a bunker hidden beneath rubble. Inside, he found 17 Calric civilians. They were thin and scared. They had been hiding for weeks, surviving on stored food and water. "We're here to help," Ryu said softly. He switched his translator on. "We're from Earth. We're getting you out." One of the Calrics, an elderly female, looked at him with wide eyes. "You're the monsters from the Death World." Ryu nodded. "Yes, but we're your monsters now." The evacuation took 6 days. 6 days of fighting through Vryn positions. 6 days of finding hidden civilians and protecting them. 6 days of showing the Vryn what it meant to face humans on the ground. Bomb's squad led a group of Vryn into a narrow canyon. The Vryn thought they were chasing fleeing prey. Instead, Bomb had planted charges along the canyon walls. When the Vryn were deep inside, she triggered the explosives. The canyon collapsed. 3,000 Vryn were buried under tons of rock. "That's for the Calrix kids they killed," Bomb said quietly. The Vryn tried to adapt. They sent different types of soldiers, bigger ones, faster ones with acid spray or toxic gas. It did not matter. For every adaptation the Vryn made, the humans had a counter. Because humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years, they knew every trick, every tactic, every dirty move. When the Vryn used gas, the humans used sealed suits. When the Vryn tunneled underground, the humans used seismic sensors and collapsed the tunnels. When the Vryn tried to ambush from above, Jin shot them out of the sky. On the 6th day, the last civilian was evacuated. Ryu stood in the center of the colony and looked at the Vryn bodies scattered everywhere. 23 Marines killed in action. He hated losing people. Each death felt personal. "Sir, the Vryn Queen Mind is trying to communicate," Sora said, checking her scanner. "Put it through," Ryu ordered. The translation was rough, but the message was clear. The Queen Mind wanted to know what the humans were, why they fought the way they did, why they seemed to enjoy combat. Ryu thought about how to answer. "Tell her we're from a planet where everything tried to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, diseases so small we cannot see them. We learned to fight, or we died. We learned to think, to plan, to work together. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. But we are the most stubborn, and we protect our friends." The Queen Mind responded with one more message, a warning to all Vryn forces. "Retreat. We have encountered a true predator species. Avoid at all costs." The Vryn forces began to pull back from Melkon 7. They left their wounded behind. They left their equipment. They just ran. Back on the transport ship, Vel met Ryu personally. The Calrix ambassador looked at the Marine commander with a mix of fear and gratitude. "You lost 23 soldiers," Vel said. 23, Ryu confirmed. His voice was heavy. 23 people who will never go home. 23 families who will mourn. War has a price, Ambassador. We pay it so others don't have to. But you saved thousands of Calrix civilians. That was the mission, Ryu said simply. Vel watched as the Marines prepared for the next deployment. They were cleaning weapons, checking equipment, joking with each other. Some were crying privately for their fallen friends, but they were all ready to go again. Your people are strange, Vel said. You are terrifying in combat. You use tactics we never imagined. You fight with a skill that seems impossible, but then you risk your lives to save our children. You share your food with our refugees. You are gentle with our wounded. Ryu looked at Vel directly. That's what makes us human, Ambassador. We know when to be monsters and when to be protectors. We learned that lesson a long time ago. Sometimes to protect the innocent, you have to become something scary to the guilty. The other species in the galaxy call Earth a death world, Vel said. They're right, Ryu said. Earth tried to kill us every day. The animals hunted us. The weather froze us or burned us. The plants were poison. The water had diseases. We should have died out 100 times. But we didn't. We learned. We adapted. We survived. And now we're here, helping you survive too. Vel understood then. The Calrix Coalition had rejected humanity because they were too violent, too dangerous, too good at war. But those were exactly the qualities they needed now. Will you teach us? Vel asked. Teach us to defend ourselves? Ryu smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. Yes, we'll teach you. Because peace is worth fighting for. But you have to be able to fight for your peace. The transport ship lifted off, heading back to the Calrix capital. Behind them, Melkon 7 was free again. The Vryn were learning a new lesson. They were learning that some prey fought back, and some prey were actually predators in disguise. Admiral Day stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Horizon and watched as the main fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. 200 warships, 20 medical vessels, 15 construction platforms, 30 supply ships. Behind them, hidden by distance, were the colony vessels and humanitarian aid transports. "Sir, the Calrix are hailing us," reported the communications officer. "Put them through," Day said. Chancellor Ho appeared on the screen. The Calrix leader looked old and tired, but there was hope in his eyes now. Hope that had not been there 3 weeks ago when Captain Tay's small force arrived. "Admiral Day," Ho said with a bow, "thank you for coming." "We're not here for thanks," Day replied. "We're here because you needed help and no one else answered. That's reason enough." Ho looked at something off-screen, then back at Day. "Your Captain Tay has been teaching our security forces. Your Commander Ryu has been training volunteers. Your medical teams have saved thousands of our wounded. You have given us more than help. You have given us hope." Day nodded. "Hope is good, but hope alone won't stop the Vryn. We received intelligence that they're gathering their full force. Everything they have. They're planning one massive attack to wipe out both our species at once." "How many ships?" Ho asked quietly. 3,000, Day answered. "The largest fleet they've ever assembled. They're scared now. Scared species do stupid things." The number hung in the air. 3,000 ships. Even with 200 human warships and whatever the Calrix could muster, it was overwhelming odds. "When will they arrive?" Ho asked. "Our scouts estimate 6 days, Day said. "We have 6 days to prepare." Over the next 6 days, the Calrix system transformed. Human engineers worked alongside Calrix workers to build orbital defense platforms. They fortified the planet's surface with shield generators. They set up sensor networks that could detect Vryn ships light years away. Dr. Yuna, Earth's leading xenobiologist, worked in a laboratory with Calrix scientists. She was teaching them things the Coalition had never considered: military medicine, biological warfare, chemical weapons. "I feel uncomfortable with this," one of the Calrix scientists said. "These weapons, they go against everything our Coalition believes in." Yuna looked at him seriously. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her voice carried weight. "I understand. On Earth, we felt the same way for a long time. We had weapons that could destroy our entire planet, bombs that could kill millions, diseases we created that could wipe out populations. But we learned something important." "What?" the Calrix scientist asked. "Having the ability to do terrible things and choosing not to is different from not having the ability at all," Yuna explained. "You were peaceful because you couldn't fight. That's not true peace. True peace is when you can fight but choose not to. You need the strength to defend yourselves, even if you never want to use it." She pulled up data on her screen. "Look at this. The Vryn are vulnerable to certain compounds found in Earth plants. If we weaponize this, we can create a defense that stops them without even firing a shot." The Calrix scientists looked at the data. It was aggressive. It was dangerous. It was also effective. "Teach us," they said. Meanwhile, Captain Tay was working with Calrix defense forces. The Coalition had security officers, but they were trained for crowd control and law enforcement, not war. "Forget everything you know about fighting," Tay told them. "You were trained to restrain and capture. That's good for criminals, but the Vryn are not criminals. They're an existential threat. You have to think differently." He showed them formation tactics, flanking maneuvers, and defensive positions. The Calrix struggled at first. Their minds were not built for aggressive thinking. but slowly, they learned. One young Calrix officer named Wex approached Tay after a training session. "Captain, I have a question." "Ask," Tay said. "How do you do it?" Wex asked. "How do you fight and kill without becoming monsters yourselves?" Tay sat down and gestured for Wex to sit beside him. "That's the hardest question. On Earth, we struggled with this for our entire history. We've had wars that killed millions. We've done terrible things to each other. But we learned." "What did you learn?" "We learned that violence is a tool, not an identity," Tay explained. "A hammer can build a house or break a skull. The tool is neutral. It's the person using it that matters. We fight to protect, not to destroy. We use violence to stop violence. The moment we start enjoying the killing, the moment we stop seeing our enemies as living beings, we become the monsters we're fighting against." "But you're so good at war," Wex said. "Yes," Tay agreed, "because we have to be. But being good at something doesn't mean we like it. I hate war. Every soldier I know hates war. But we're good at it because the alternative is letting innocent people die." On the 6th day, the Vryn arrived. 3,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The largest fleet anyone had ever seen. The Vryn Empress herself was commanding from the flagship. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral Day ordered calmly. The human fleet moved into position, 200 ships against 3,000. The Calrix had managed to put together 80 ships, their entire remaining fleet. Even combined, they were outnumbered 10 to 1. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said. "Put it through," Day replied. The Vryn Empress appeared on screen. She was massive, easily 20 feet tall, with armor that looked like black metal. Her voice came through the translator as clicks and screeches. "Humans, you have interfered with our expansion. You have destroyed our soldiers. You have cost us resources and time. For this, you will be consumed along with the Calrix." Day stood up. "You came to this system and killed billions of innocent people. People who offered you surrender. People who begged for mercy. You gave them none. Now, you face the consequences." "You cannot win," the Empress said. 3,000 ships against 200. You are outnumbered." Day smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We've been outnumbered before. We won then, too." The Battle of Calrix Prime began. It would be studied in military academies for generations. The Vryn attacked in waves, trying to overwhelm the human Calrix fleet through sheer numbers. But Admiral Day had planned for this. The human ships formed a defensive sphere around the planet, with the Calrix ships in supporting positions. As the Vryn charged forward, they hit the first surprise. The space around the planet was mined, not with conventional explosives, but with devices that released the chemical compounds Dr. Yuna had weaponized. Vryn ships flew through clouds of chemicals that disrupted their communication, their navigation, their hive-mind connection. Hundreds of Vryn ships crashed into each other, unable to coordinate properly. "Fire!" Day ordered. The human fleet opened up with everything. Railguns firing at relativistic speeds, missiles that tracked their targets through quantum entanglement, energy weapons that could cut through Vryn armor like paper. And something the Calrix had never seen, nuclear missiles. The Vryn Empress watched in horror as her fleet was torn apart. The humans were not just fighting. They were demonstrating every type of warfare they had developed over thousands of years. Human ships used electronic warfare to hack into Vryn communication systems, feeding them false information. They used kinetic bombardment, dropping heavy projectiles from orbit that hit with the force of tactical nukes. They used cyber warfare, infecting Vryn systems with computer viruses that turned their own weapons against them. The Calrix, inspired by their human allies, fought with a courage they did not know they had. Their ships might not be as strong as human vessels, but they were learning. They protected damaged human ships. They evacuated wounded crews. They fought not out of aggression, but out of a desperate need to survive. 18 hours into the battle, the Vryn fleet was broken. Of 3,000 ships, over 2,000 were destroyed or disabled. The rest were trying to retreat. "Admiral, should we pursue?" asked the tactical officer. Day looked at the retreating Vryn ships. He looked at his own fleet. 17 human ships were destroyed. 43 were damaged. 28 Calrix ships were gone. Good people had died today. "No," Day said, "let them go. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to defend." He opened a channel to the Vryn Empress. "This is your only warning. Leave this sector. Never return. If you do, we won't show mercy again." The Empress looked at him with her alien eyes. For the first time, Day saw something he did not expect. He saw fear. "What are you?" she asked. "We're humans," Day said simply. "We're from a planet that tried to kill us every day. We learn to survive. We learn to fight. We learn to protect what we care about. You chose to attack innocent people. We chose to defend them. That's the difference between us." The Vryn fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel and disappeared. They would not return. The Vryn Empire would mark this sector as forbidden space, the place where they met a species that fought back harder than they could imagine. 3 months after the battle, the Calrix Coalition held an emergency assembly. All 47 member species sent representatives. The Grand Chamber on the capital world had been rebuilt, its damaged walls now repaired. But the memories of the war remained fresh. Chancellor Ho stood at the center podium and looked at the assembled delegates. Some were old friends. Some had abandoned the Calrix when they needed help most. All of them were here now to decide humanity's fate. "The question before us is simple," Ho said. "Should we allow humans to join the Calrix Coalition?" The chamber erupted in debate. It was not quiet or orderly. Species who had been silent for 3,000 years suddenly had strong opinions. "They are too dangerous," one delegate said. "Look at their weapons. Look at how they fight. They could conquer us all." "They saved us," another argued. "When we begged for help, they came. When we faced extinction, they fought for us." Ambassador Vel stood up. He had been quiet during most of the debate, but now it was time to speak. The chamber fell silent. "I am the one who called Earth," Vel said. "I am the one who brought humans here. If there is blame, I accept it. But I want you all to understand something." He activated a holographic display. It showed images from the war. Vryn ships destroying Calrix colonies, cities burning, civilians dying. "This was us before the humans came. We sent surrender messages. We begged for mercy. The Vryn did not care. They were going to kill every single one of us. Our civilization, 3,000 years old, would have ended." The images changed. Now they showed human ships arriving, Marines protecting civilians, medical teams treating wounded, engineers rebuilding destroyed homes. "Yes, humans are dangerous," Vel continued. "Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are good at war. But do you know what else they are? They are kind. They are compassionate. They risk their lives for people they just met. They share their food with strangers. They cry for the friends they lose in battle." He looked around the chamber. "We called them monsters from a death world. We rejected them 50 years ago because we thought they were too savage to join our civilized coalition. But when we needed civilization to save us, civilization did nothing. When we needed savagery to defend us, the so-called savages came." A delegate from the Rena species stood up. "But what happens when they turn on us? What happens when they decide to use their weapons against the coalition?" Before Vel could answer, the chamber doors opened. Captain Tay walked in, accompanied by Commander Ryu and Lieutenant Hana. They had not been invited to the assembly, but no one stopped them. "May I speak?" Tay asked. Ho nodded. "Please." Tay walked to the center of the chamber. He looked tired. The war had aged him, but his voice was steady. "I understand your fear," Tay said. "You look at us and see weapons. You see violence. You see a species that has killed billions of its own kind throughout history. You're not wrong to be afraid." He paused and looked at each delegate. "But let me tell you what we see. We see species that never had to fight for survival. We see people who built paradise without ever knowing hell. We see civilizations that created art and music and beauty without ever having to defend it." "And you envy us?" a delegate asked. "No," Tay said firmly. "We admire you. On Earth, we killed each other for thousands of years before we learned to work together. We had wars that destroyed continents. We created weapons that could end all life on our planet. We did terrible things. But we learned from those mistakes. We learned that violence should be the last option, not the first. We learned that protecting life is more important than taking it." Hana stepped forward. "Earth didn't send us here to conquer. We came because someone asked for help. That's what we do. 3 other hostile species have tried to invade Earth. We defeated them, but we didn't exterminate them. We offered them peace. 2 of them accepted. We're still fighting the 3rd, but we've offered them peace too." Ryu spoke next, his gruff voice carrying through the chamber. "I lost 23 Marines on Melkon 7. 23 good people who died protecting Calric civilians they had never met. We didn't ask for payment. We didn't demand territory. We just did what was right." The chamber was quiet. The delegates were thinking. Some looked convinced. Others still looked afraid. Then a small Calrix child walked into the chamber. She was holding the hand of a human marine, a young woman named Nari. The child walked up to the podium and looked at the delegates with big eyes. "The monsters saved me," the child said in a small voice. "I was hiding in the dark. I was scared. The bad things were coming. Then the humans came and they protected me. They gave me food. They told me I was safe. They're not monsters. They're friends." Ho knelt down beside the child. "Thank you for speaking," he said gently. Then he looked at the assembly. "This child speaks the truth. We need to vote. All in favor of allowing humanity to join the Calrix Coalition?" The vote was not unanimous. Some delegates voted against it. They could not overcome their fear, but the majority voted yes. Humanity was admitted to the Calrix Coalition. But there was a condition. Chancellor Ho spoke it clearly. "Humanity will serve as the Coalition's defense force. You will train our people. You will build our defenses. You will protect us from threats we cannot face alone." Admiral Day, who had been watching from the back of the chamber, stepped forward. "We accept, but we have a condition too. We will defend you. But we will also teach you to defend yourselves. Peace is worth fighting for, but you must be able to fight for your peace." "Agreed," Ho said. Over the following months, the transformation began. Human military advisors were stationed on every coalition world. They taught tactics, strategy, and defensive warfare. Not to create aggression, but to create strength. Human engineers built defense platforms and shield generators. They showed the Calrix how to detect threats early and respond effectively. Dr. Yuna continued working with coalition scientists, sharing medical advances and biological knowledge. But she also taught them about ethics in warfare, about rules of engagement, about the difference between necessary force and cruelty. Captain Tay became the human ambassador to the coalition. He spent his days in diplomatic meetings, helping the coalition understand Earth culture. He explained why humans fought the way they did, why they valued individual freedom, why they believed in defending the weak. One day, Vel found Tai standing alone in an observation room, looking at Earth on a distant view screen. "Do you miss home?" Vel asked. "Every day," Tay admitted. "But this is important work. The galaxy is bigger and more dangerous than the Coalition realized. You need protection. You need allies who have seen the darkness." We called you Deathworlders, Vel said. We meant it as an insult. Tay smiled. I know, but you know what? It's accurate. We are Deathworlders. We came from a planet that tried to kill us in a million different ways. And we survived. We thrived. We learned that life is precious because it's hard to keep. We learned that protecting life sometimes means being willing to fight for it. Are all humans like you? Vel asked. Like me? No, Tay said. Humans are diverse. We have artists and poets and farmers and scientists. We have people who have never held a weapon in their lives. But all of us, every single human, knows what it means to survive. Because Earth taught us. And now we're here to teach you. Months turned to years. The Calrix coalition grew stronger. They had defenses now. They had trained security forces. They had the knowledge to protect themselves. The Vryn never returned. Other aggressive species heard about what happened at the Battle of Calrix Prime. They heard about the humans who came from a death world and defeated an empire. They decided to leave the coalition alone. 5 years after the war, Vel visited Earth for the first time. He stood on the surface and felt the heavy gravity pulling at him. He smelled the air, thick with oxygen and 1,000 different scents. He saw animals that could kill him without effort. He saw weather patterns that seemed impossible. This is your home, Vel said in wonder. This is the world that created you. Ryu, who was showing him around, nodded. Every day Earth tries to kill us. The heat, the cold, the animals, the storms, diseases, even the plants. But we love it anyway. It's harsh, but it's beautiful. It made us strong, but it also taught us to appreciate life. That night, Vel attended a ceremony at a human military base. They were honoring the Marines who died at Melkon 7. Each name was read aloud. Each soldier was remembered. Families wept. Friends embraced. And Calrix civilians who had been saved stood beside them, mourning people they had never met, but who had given their lives for them. Vel understood then. Humans were not monsters. They were survivors who chose to protect others. They were warriors who valued peace. They were, despite everything, hope. Years later, a young Calrix asked Tai, who was now quite old, "Are humans scary?" Tay, his hair gray now, his face lined with age, knelt down with difficulty. He smiled at the child. "Only to our enemies," he said gently. "To our friends, we're just people who've learned to survive. And now we're teaching you to survive too." The child thought about this. "My teacher says Earth is a death world." "It is," Tay confirmed. "But you still live there?" "We do. Because home is home, even when it's dangerous. And maybe especially because it's dangerous. It reminds us that life is precious, that every day is a gift, that protecting each other matters." The child nodded, not fully understanding, but trusting this old human who spoke with such kindness. As Tay watched the child run off to play with other Calrix and human children, he thought about the journey. From rejection to alliance. From fear to friendship, from seeing humans as monsters to seeing them as protectors. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Strength without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without strength is vulnerability. True peace required both, and humanity, forged on a death world, had learned to balance both. The Calrix coalition was no longer just a collection of peaceful species hoping violence would never find them. They were now a coalition that could defend their peace. And at the center of that defense stood the Deathworlders, the humans, the species that survived hell and then reached out to save others from it. Vel, now Chancellor of the Coalition, often thought back to that desperate day when he sent the distress call to Earth. He had been afraid they would bring more violence. Instead, they brought hope. "We called them Deathworlders," he told the Coalition Assembly years later. "We meant it as a warning, but I use it now as a title of respect. They came from death and chose to protect life. They are Deathworlders, and we are grateful they answered our call.